Evolution of the brain and behavior. So let's go. Modern scientists see the study of the change of life over the ages due to natural selection and sexual selection as beneficial to understanding humanity from more than just its current snapshot view. This can be done through DNA analysis, where scientists compare the DNA of one species with another. For example, we know that the DNA of chimpanzee only differs from human DNA by 1.6%. So we're really close to the chimpanzee evolutionarily. Scientists have been toying with the idea of evolution for a couple of centuries before Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace published their findings in 1858. Darwin actually published first, though he had been working on the theory for almost 30 years. In 1859, Darwin published On the Origin of the Species by Means of Natural Selection. Darwin made three main observations. Individuals of a given species are not identical. Some of the variation is inheritable, and not all offspring survive. Darwin would later add a fourth corollary, that of sexual selection. Sexual selection states that each sex exerts selective pressures on the other in terms of both anatomical and behavioral features that favor reproductive success. Hence the strange anatomical features of some creatures. And I have three examples here. The cardinal, which is bright red, and you can see him coming from miles away. The peacock, which has a tail that makes him almost non-functional. It is so large. Now, why in the world are male cardinals so bright red, and why in the world do peacocks have such gigantic tails? And the answer is sexual selection. The females of both species require the cardinal to be red, and they require in order to reproduce, the peacock has to have an enormous tail, and then the peahen will reproduce with them. This is an example. This is the mandrill. If you saw Jumanji, the second Jumanji movie, they were attacked by mandrills. As you can see, the coloring on the mandrill is quite distinct. And one of the reasons that the mandrill can have such a distinct coloration is because the mandrill has no natural enemies. Do humans participate in sexual selection? These are the Babilla women, and as you can see, they have a plate on their upper lip. The Chinese, of course, they used to bind women's feet. They would fold the toes under to make their feet smaller and make them look more delicate. It seems to me, and this is my own personal prejudice, but it seems to me that we are doing this to our feet as well, with pizza-toed shoes and high-heeled shoes that jam women's toes. It's not just women. The men's shoes are grossly uncomfortable. I don't believe in that to the extent that I wear the most comfortable shoes I can find. Anyway, this is what Chinese feet used to look like. And if you wanted to get married, you had to have the smallest feet possible. This is the flathead. Actually, there were indigenous people all over the Americas that did this. When I was in South America, we went to a museum and they had skulls, and many of them were shaped interestingly. And the way they did it, of course, was to put a board on the child's skull so that they would be born with an elongated skull. This is an indigenous person from the Flathead Reservation in Montana. And of course, no one does this anymore. But sexual selection, did you have to have a head that looked like this in order to be thought of as attractive? That's a good question. And of course, Europeans weren't immune to doing strange things to themselves. Uh, we have we have people in Africa, we have people in Asia, we have people in the Americas, and also Europeans wanted the smallest waist possible, so they would tighten up uh, their corsets in order to make their waist look small, even though it wasn't really. So where's all of their organs going? Their organs are going down and up. They're squeezing their organs into different places to make themselves look skinny. This is scarification from Africa. This is an individual known as a pygmy, and this is a Cherokee Indian, one of the tallest of the indigenous people. And this is one of the shortest of humans. The Maori, of course, tattooed their faces to make themselves look more desirable. These ladies have elongated their earlobes in order to make themselves so much more attractive. And these ladies have elongated their necks. This lady, these are young girls. These are the Maasai. The Maasai women select men by how high they can jump, as strange as that may seem. And this is how they do it. They bounce off of their toes and they get this rhythm going, and then they will lift up with one leg. And it's kind of like being on a swing and, pulling your legs in and out and making yourself go higher. Well, they do the same thing with their legs. And they're very tall and slender to begin with. And these are sub-Saharan African males who paint their faces, and in order to attract a woman, they have to be able to move their eyes independently of one another. And of course, we do strange things to attract. This is a female, actually, to attract the opposite sex. There's another female. This is in, this lady is in New Orleans. I think this lady is in New Orleans as well. Understanding the phylogeny of species allows us to study the behavioral and neural adaptations that allow animals to exploit particular ecological niches. Comparative studies may focus on specific differences between closely related species, or may be concerned with general principles across larger numbers of species. But in each case, the use of an evolutionary framework provides additional explanatory power. And of course, there you go. Here we are humans. This is us right here. The principles of neural function revealed by comparative anatomy studies may often be generalized to many species, including humans. And if we look at, we can look at brains, we can look at lungs, we can look at anything, any physical structure, to see how we are the same or different from other animals. The major divisions of the brain are shared by all vertebrates. Brain differences between species of vertebrates can often be directly related to their ecology and behavioral complexity. Such differences tend to be quantitative in nature. Relative size of brain regions or the size of neurons is a good example. The field of classifying animals is known as taxonomy. Taxonomy is an ongoing endeavor. Taxonomy can be done in many ways, including paleontology, studying fossil remains, comparing animal DNA with human DNA, putting paleontological information with DNA analysis is a study called convergent evolution. So we're trying to figure out how we got to be the way that we are. Two of the fastest swimmers in the ocean are tuna and dolphin. Each evolved from efficient swimming and so are similarities. So there are similarities in their structure. However, the dolphin is a mammal and the tuna is a fish. Similar features due to convergent evolution is called homoplasy, similar development. And that's what happened with the tuna. And as you can see, the tail is aimed in a different direction. They both have dorsal fins. Homology, study of similarities, looks at similarities between body structures of animals with common ancestry. A good example of homology is the forelimb of several mammals. Outwardly, they seem so different, but the structure is very similar. Analogy refers to two structures that have similar function. And of course, we're talking about the arm, and this is the hand. This is what a dog has exactly the same bones that a human has, but they are walking around on the ends of their fingers. And this is a seal's flipper, and as you can see, they have exactly the same bones. And this is a bat's wing, and once again, they have the same. All four of these animals have the same bone structure, skeletal structure of the arm. Classification of species begins in general terms and runs to more and more specific. Kingdom is the most general term. Living creatures are broken into 5 kingdoms: Animalia, Plantae, Fungi, Minera, which are bacteria, and Protista, which are single-cell animals. So we are in the Animalia. We are animals. We're not plants, we're not funguses, we're not bacteria or single-cell animals. The main subdivision of a kingdom is a phylum. 3 phyla are Chordata, Mollusca, and Arthropoda. And we, of course, are Chordata. We have spinal cords. Mollusks and arthropods are the other 2. The main subdivision of a phylum is a class. Some classes within the phylum Chordata, Mammalia, Aves, and Reptilia. The main subdivision of a class is an order. Some orders within the class Mammalia, Carnivora, Herbivora, and Primates. Now, as far as Chordata are concerned, we are Mammalia. We are mammals. We feed our young with milk. Aves are birds, and Reptilia, are, of course, are reptiles. As far as the order is concerned, there are 3 of them: Carnivora, which is a meat eater; Herbivora, which is a plant eater; and Primates, and of course we are primates. The main subdivision of the order is the family, such as Canidae and Felidae, dogs and cats. The main subdivision of a family is the genus, such as Canis and Vulpes. Canis is dog, and Vulpes is fox. The main subdivision of the genus is the species, such as Canis familiaris, and that's a domesticated dog. While Darwin's theory was widely accepted, no one really knew or understood how change took place until biologist Hugo de Vries. Working with primroses, de Vries proved that sudden changes were caused spontaneously by mutations. And this, of course, is a ruby red grapefruit. When I was young, we used to get ruby red grapefruit. We loved them, but they had a lot of seeds. Now you can get ruby red grapefruit, no seeds at all. Why don't they have seeds? Because there was a mutation once upon a time, and they were able to continue this line of ruby red grapefruit. Genetic studies subsequently demonstrated that chromosomes provided the building blocks of inheritance. Later, genes were identified as the building blocks of chromosomes. Watson and Crick demonstrated that DNA was arranged in a double helix made up of nucleic acid. In other words, in order for an individual to be created, You have to get half of your genetic material from your mother, half of your genetic material from your father, and the two go together in order to make uh, the individual that you are. Now, you may have your mother's eyes, and you may have your father's hair. This is all logical structures. Today, the modern Genome Project gives us an ever-expanding view of the makeup of humans as compared to other creatures. Researchers have determined that species who have to hunt for their food, such as humans and carnivores, have bigger brains than animals who don't have to search for their food, such as ungulates. And of course, these are humans and they are hunting for their food. It looks like they've got bacon and eggs and muffins and orange juice. They've secured all of these two young ladies. This ungulate, of course, this is a deer. Looks like a white-tailed deer, I am thinking. Yeah, its ears are small enough. It eats grass, so it doesn't have a hard time finding it, usually, unless there's drought. And of course, these are the carnivores that are eating meat and eating eggs, which is another form of meat, and muffins and orange juice. The more novel the means of obtaining food, the larger the forebrain of the animal. Magpies have been known to dig up potatoes. House sparrows have been seen picking the insects from car radiator grills. Crows have been known to drop rock-hard palm nuts in front of cars that run over them and open them. And of course, this is a magpie, that is a sparrow, and this is a crow. Birds who store food will have a larger hippocampus than birds who don't. The hippocampus is necessary for memory, thus a larger one is needed for those species that rely on memory for survival. The acorn woodpecker, that's the acorn woodpecker. Clark's nutcracker, that's the nutcracker. No, that's a black-capped chickadee. I'm sorry, that's a black-capped chickadee, and this is Clark's nutcracker. Pickier the eaters, the bigger the brains. The differences between the brains of humans and the brains of other mammals are mostly quantitative. Rats and humans are similar in that each has a brain that represents about 2% of the total body weight. The basic differences have mostly to do with the size of the cerebrum of the human and the prominent increase in surface due to the gyri and the sulci. And that's the difference between a human brain, as you can see, lots of gyri, lots of sulci. This is a rat brain, almost completely smooth. It's got exactly the same structure that the human brain has. And both of them represent about 2% of their body weight. Rats don't miss out completely. They have a much larger olfactory bulb than humans and so have a much stronger sense of smell. And where is the olfactory bulb? Right there. It's right here. Oh, this is a chimpanzee brain, this is a human brain, and this is a rat's brain. The nervous system of vertebrates have several similarities. They develop from a hollow dorsal neural tube. They show bilateral symmetry. Segmentation is present. Pairs of spinal nerves extend from each level of the spinal cord. The central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system are separate. Localization is present. Certain functions are controlled by certain locations in the central nervous system. Anthropologists and comparative biologists assume that all vertebrates have these features in common because they descended from a common ancestor. Invertebrates are another story. There are 17 phyla to cover the invertebrates, while vertebrates are part of only one. It has been estimated that for every human on Earth, there are over 1 billion insects. Basic plan, all vertebrates and most invertebrates share a basic plan that consists of a central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system. And of course, this is the human brain, this monster here, and this is the central nervous system. This is the peripheral nervous system. This is a grasshopper, and there's the brain right there, and this is the rest of this, well, most of this. This is part of its central nervous system, right down to here, and the rest of its peripheral nervous system. All vertebrates and many invertebrates, including mollusks and insects, have brains. The general evolutionary trend in both vertebrates and invertebrates is toward decreasing brain control over ganglia at lower levels of the body. And this is a human brain, well, kind of, it's Stewie's brain. And this is an insect brain. Axons of mammalians neurons are surrounded by myelin, which helps them conduct impulses faster. Invertebrates have no myelin to speed nerve conduction. If we look at present creatures and their fossilized ancestors, we can see that the brain has changed over time, whether it's a bird's brain or a hominid brain. Making a cast of the inside of a skull to map the brain is referred to as an endocast, and that's one of the ways that we have determined that the human brain and some of our ancestors have different shaped brains. And we're going to see them in just, there we go. Now, oddly enough, there's a natural progression from smaller, the chimpanzee, gorilla, Australopithecus robustus, Australopithecus habilis, erectus, Neanderthal man, and then the modern human, the Homo sapiens sapien. As you can see, there was a natural progression from smaller to bigger, and the human brain, of course, is much larger than the Homo habilis or Homo erectus. With the humanoid that hominid that had the largest brain turned out to be Neanderthal man, as you can plainly see. Neanderthal man had a much larger brain than modern humans, and modern humans and Neanderthal men lived on Earth at the same time. So something happened to the Neanderthal man. I just read an article where they were saying that it was a problem with reproduction that might have done the Neanderthal man in. And there we go. Total brain volume, 1,252 grams, centimeters. And that is the end of the chapter. So I'll talk to you next week. I think we're only tackling one chapter again next week, if I'm not mistaken.